Hi, my name is Cristina Archetti, and I'm professor at the University of Oslo. I'm delighted to welcome you to the launch of my new book, Childlessness in the Age of Communication, Deconstructing Silence. I'm a Litteraturhuset, the House of Literature in Oslo. And this was supposed to be an event both in presence and online. As it turns out, we're caught in a semi-lockdown, so we're going to go ahead online only. I did not want this event to be very formal. First of all, because we are in Norway, and so it has to be a bit cozy. I will start by saying a few words about the book, particularly why I wrote it, and the challenges that one faces when writing about such a deeply sensitive, and in my case, very personal topic. What I'm really looking forward to do is to have a conversation with a range of guests. We will discuss different dimensions of the silence that surrounds not having children not by choice. And this is not the first conversation I've had with them. I've had many over the years. I wanted this event to be some kind of reunion, in fact, some kind of party for those who have played an important part in my journey so far. This has been a journey of research and discovery, but it's also been one of personal growth, particularly in coming to terms with the biggest change of plan I've ever faced. And I would have never been able to write a book that effectively breaks a taboo without their support and that of many others. There are just too many. I couldn't fit all of them in one single event, but I know that some of them are watching, and so my gratitude goes out to them once again. Yeah, special love goes out to the greatest supporter of them all, and the rock in my life, who is my husband, Robin. And so he's watching. My love goes out to him. I should also thank my department, the Institute of Media and Communication at the University of Oslo, for kindly supporting this event. My presentation and each of the conversations that will follow will be followed by a question and answer session. So if you're following online, thanks first of all for joining, and please do send in your questions by commenting under the video streaming. I will be collecting your questions. I hope to answer them. And I know how tiring it is to follow online, so let's get started. She's a strange mixture of aggressiveness and shyness. She wears a tight red jacket, black trousers, and low-heeled black boots. Her jewelry is minimalist. Her earrings just two sparkly dots on her earlobes, barely visible under her dark, long hair. She's slim, moves fast and energetically. She springs up from her seat when the presenter announces she's going to talk next, keeping her eyes to the ground while she moves to the front of the room towards a high table with a laptop. Her presentation is already on the screen. She looks at the small audience in front of her, mainly women. Some couples sit at the back, guarded by empty seats on either side. She smiles at them, while clutching tightly her papers and a pencil. Maybe she's a bit nervous. So is the audience, slightly shifting in their chairs. She turns to the side to quickly say to the presenter, "Thank you for the kind introduction." She puts the papers and pencil on the table. If they were notes, it's not clear why she brought them, since she's not even looking at them. She takes a big breath, then begins to talk. I feel like a bit of an intruder today because I'm not really a fertility expert. I don't have a medical background. Just the other day, I was talking at a conference about social media and extremism. It's slightly disorienting to be at this event today. She makes another pause to inhale deeply with her mouth, as if, despite her microphone, she had been shouting at the top of her lungs, and the few words she said had absorbed all oxygen in the room. At the same time, I'm delighted to be here because this is a topic that is very close to my heart. She looks down,
Then her eyes seem to search for somebody in the small crowd. They stop when they find Anita Malmros. Anita is a therapist and spoke earlier about what happens in a woman's mind when her expectations about motherhood are not fulfilled. The speaker's eyes seem to sparkle lightly. Her shoulders relax, as if reassured when Anita's gaze meets hers.
This is a topic I felt I really needed to talk about, and I even recently started doing research about it. That's my way to deal with problems. If I can analyze them, then I can also create some distance from them.
She holds in her palm her other closed hand, gently, as if cradling a heart that has fallen out of place. The audience has stopped moving. They know what's happening. The speaker is fighting against the throat that wants her to stop talking and start crying. Anita smiles imperceptibly and nods in approval, not letting her eyes go, encouraging her to continue as if she was visually leading her by the hand. The speaker nods back, her lips sealed, slowly exhaling as if this required an effort.
I thought I need to face this in the open. And it is painful, but I know that something good is going to come out of this.
This talking woman is me. This talking woman is me.
This talking woman, it's me. It's Saturday, 28th of May, 2016, the day before Mother's Day in Sweden. I'm a guest speaker at a Childless Day event organized by Barnlängtan, a Swedish association for the involuntary childless in Stockholm. I've been asked to talk about my experience. But what shall I say? I remember asking, incredulous, at the invitation I had just received. Just tell your story, said Linda MALM with her eternally smiling voice. This is the fourth arrangement that Barnlängtan has organized. We're at a hotel in the hip area of Södermalm. And from here, this morning, while having breakfast in a cloud of cinnamon scent, I could see the dome of the venue where just a couple of weeks ago the country hosted the Eurovision Song Contest. My academic expertise is in politics and media. I've never decided not to have children. I'm not infertile either. How did I get here? I've just read you an excerpt from the beginning of my book, and my story is very long, but a good beginning could be 2013, the moment when I became a statistic. My husband and I were diagnosed with unexplained infertility, which means that our medical tests are fine, but then medicine cannot explain why we don't get pregnant. At that time, I felt alone. I felt lost. I thought we had to be an extremely rare case. But soon I discovered that there were many other individuals in a similar situation. In fact, I discovered that a quarter of the adult population of the Western world is childless. The usual line is 1 woman in 5. However, if we look at the statistics of countries like Italy, Germany, Japan, Australia, then the proportion is more 1 in 4 and rising. In Sweden, 15% of women don't have children, but when it comes to men, it's 1 in 4 who will never become a dad. And that's the same proportion in other European countries. All of these people without children don't have children because they are barren, because they can't. That's about 10% of the cohort. Another 10% doesn't want to have children. The remaining percentage, 80%, so the great majority, they are childless by circumstance, because it just happened that way. Because perhaps a person is single, because the partner died, because one was ill during fertile years, because one is poor and cannot afford IVF, or because you are gay and you are excluded by policy from treatment. So many possible different causes. So many people without children, and yet, whenever the media talk about this topic, they always portray individuals who don't want to have children, or who have just got their miracle babies. So involuntary childlessness, it's always a temporary stage. I've realized that there were millions of people, in fact still are millions of people around the world, who I've never seen, whose stories we never hear. And this is for me a very interesting question. It's a mystery, in fact, for me, who is a communication scholar. How is it possible that there is so much silence about so many people globally? As a woman, however, I had a more pressing question. How was I going to survive this? It's not having the baby. It's everything else. After IVF failed, my life fell apart. Not because I didn't get pregnant. It's because everything I had believed in up to that point was proved wrong. I was told I could have a career and I could have a family. I was told I could have everything, and I knew that I could have everything. It was just a matter of working long enough on it. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And having a baby was the only thing I didn't need to work on, because that's what all women do, having babies. I thought I was doing the right things. I thought I was successful. I thought I was perfect. And now this. My body was boycotting me, and I wished I could have ripped myself open to see what was wrong with me. I wasn't sad. All I could feel was rage. Perhaps not what you would expect, rage, but not uncommon either. I've just shown you an excerpt from a performance lecture I gave in 2018 about this topic at the Norwegian Storytelling Festival. So why did I write this book? Precisely because I wanted to tell a different story. I wanted to convey the complexity of the childless experience. I wanted to show how it feels and what it means to be a person without children in a society that revolves around family. I also wanted to show that childlessness doesn't stop when you stop trying. You don't just get over it. In fact, the story begins right there, when you stop trying and you are forced to face a life you haven't really chosen to live. I also wanted to reclaim childlessness from a childless perspective. Most public discourse approaches childlessness as a medical problem. It's a problem about fertility, it's about reproduction, it's about getting or not getting the baby. And yes, all these aspects are fine, but in the grand scheme of things, not having the baby, as heartbreaking as it is not the worst. it's the enormity of the consequences that come from not having that baby. So the aspects I wanted to emphasize about the childless experience are the ones that are most hidden. For example, the existential dimension of childlessness. It affects every single fiber of your being. This is what I analyze in the book. It affects your relationships. First of all, the relationship with your partner, but then all single relationship in your life. I've realized that I've started looking at the world with the eyes of an extremist, categorizing everyone on the basis of their reproductive status. Childlessness also leads to grief. It's a reaction similar to bereavement, as if somebody really had died, because in fact your imagined person, your imagined self as a parent has died, and your imagined child or children have died, in fact every single month probably. And this bereavement response keeps on going, perhaps indefinitely, because there is nobody to bury, and nobody acknowledges that this reaction exists. So you also experience a catastrophic loss of meaning, because all your points of references have collapsed. You had a story about your life, and now this story has gone. You're a character in the middle of nothing. It affects your identity. If a real woman is a mother, and I don't have children, then what am I? And also you lose connection with your body, because suddenly your body is branded as defective. And so you're trapped in this shell which you hate. And it took me a few years to actually reestablish a communication with my body. There is also a social and a political dimension to childlessness. So first of all, there's the dimension of exclusion and isolation. In Norway and Scandinavia more in general, where I'm based in Norway, the whole society actually revolves around children. It's very beautiful. However, if you don't have them, then you are excluded. When you're invisible, also it means you're not represented. And this, in practice, means policy gaps. So there are gaps when it comes to the structures to deal with the trauma that childlessness is, because there are no structures to deal with the long-term reaction of bereavement that we have in the long term, perhaps even for decades. And also, who's going to take care of us when we will get old in an economic context where even welfare states rely on the informal labor provided by close family members? Who is going to help us? Who is going to be our advocate when we are at our most vulnerable? I can assure you, no politician is thinking about this, and there are millions of individuals that are going to be affected by this. And also, why does childlessness need fixing? Of course, I'm not against the fact that help is available for those who wish to have a child, but I'm against the assumptions behind the policy that you need to be fixed because you are defective and your life is defective. Why don't we promote instead the script of a life that is worth living with or without children? These are some of the issues that I discuss in the book. How did I write it? I'm a researcher, so I conducted some research, but then I also used the creative writing to try and present it in a different way. I wanted to provide two perspectives, that of the researcher, but also that of the woman, because I realized that I could talk for hours about statistics on fertility, but my listeners would get absolutely nothing of the human experience that childlessness is. So in terms of research, I'm not going to bore you with the methodology, but you can ask me the questions if you like. I involved interviews, conducted interviews with the childless individuals, women and men. I analyzed the portrayal of childless characters in movies. I conducted observation of websites and Facebook pages, both dedicated to trying to conceive and to childlessness. And I analyzed my own experience as part of an approach called autoethnography. I also wrote poems. I used evocative writing. I did a lot of experimentation in this sense. And what I wanted to achieve was a language of feeling in the body. I wanted my reader to feel something. Because if you don't feel anything, then you can't understand. You have to really be a bit in my shoes. My whole book is about silence. And silence is not an absence, it's not empty, it's full of things. It's full of pain, it's full of suffering. Silence is a posture, silence is a tone of voice. Silence is hiding in the corner. Silence is an uncertain step at the margin. I wanted to explain silence, particularly what the structure of silence was. But also I wanted to describe what it's like to live in this silence and to navigate this silence on a daily basis. I faced also the challenge of writing about silence. How do you talk about something that is notoriously unshareable, like, for example, pain? And also, I had to deal myself in trying to break this silence with the disciplining mechanisms that are at work when we are dealing with taboo topics. An example, somebody asked me, what are you working on? And when I mention the topic, then this person starts fidgeting or starts looking around. And my immediate reaction is I start feeling insecure. I start wondering, am I doing the right thing? Why am I making people uncomfortable? But that is precisely what happens when you mention taboo. And so understanding the mechanisms is useful to actually break them. So what explains silence? Well, I mentioned taboo, so stigma is the first of them. Of course, being infertile is a stigmatized condition. Nobody wants to advertise this status. But even if an individual affected by childlessness wants to talk about it, sometimes cannot make a sound. It's really difficult to talk. That happened to me, that happened to some of my interviewees, that happened to many people I talked to. And being a communication researcher, for me it's interesting to see that the root of this pain is really a lot of messages we are bombarded with every day. So the media have a role in this picture. Particularly, the root of the pain is the clash between this story, I'm suddenly caught in, where I have a defective body and I cannot reproduce, and the narratives out there that talk about what it means to be a realized individual, what it means to be happy, and what it means to be successful. The story of childless people is also an untellable one that nobody really wants to hear. Because it's a story that says that sometimes medicine or science cannot solve your problem. And this is a story that is terrifying. And of course, the less you talk, the more reality gets organized around the needs of the others, and you sink more and more into the shadow of invisibility. It's a vicious circle. Enough with the content of the book. What did I learn? Well, I developed a new theory of silence for the 21st century. I also experimented a lot with creative methods. So the combination between research and creativity has now become my unique selling point, if you want to call it that way, and I would like to develop it further in my career. From a personal point of view, I have come a long way through a life that I had not really chosen. Have I come over it? Of course not. And I would like to leave you with some reflections from the conclusions of my book. I have metabolized, I think, the worst of my grief. Yet, it is still tough. I'm inching forward, opening a path that might lead me to be more at peace with myself. Peace, anyway, will not eventually just materialize. There is no peace, only fragile ceasefires. I know I need to work at them continuously, incessantly. Balance is like standing on a ball. I need to keep on moving. It is all about finding the point of stillness. But where is it? Between not trying and trying too hard, between not challenging yourself and overdoing it, between being too bold and too shy, between the regret for having made one choice and the regret for having made a different one. Some days the point of balance shifts because I've been on a trip abroad, because I've worked at the weekend, I've taken one class too many in the gym, or the winter has arrived and it's darker earlier in the evening. So I collect information, I monitor, I review, I adjust. I am the manager of a dam that mustn't collapse. However, I'm starting to take myself less seriously, to forgive myself. I need more tolerance for myself, more kindness. Maybe I need to treat myself as my own child. It's difficult when you're not a mother to start with, is the first thought that comes to mind. But then I remind myself that I am a mother, just of a different kind. And that learning is my specialty, after all, my reason for living. I find it helpful to think that grief is temporary, that I just need to take one day at a time, and that, in the end, I will always have the power to rewrite my story. Thank you. Okay, so we are resuming, and some questions did arrive afterwards, so I'll just address two in the quickest way possible. So one question was writing a form of therapy? The short answer is yes, and in fact it was extremely helpful to tell my story. Yeah, I came a long way through my, well, it's been really a healing process, in fact, writing my story and being able to put it into perspective. And what motivates your work was a second question. A great motivation for my work is knowing that this is useful to other people. And sometimes it is really painful, not only to talk about this topic, but also to write about it, and especially writing a book. Some writers say writing is rewriting. And so actually revising over and over again the same draft is extremely painful. But I've always had in my mind that this can be very helpful to others, and that what pushed me through. Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk to HILDE HAUG. She is a sociologist and a film director. I met Hilde early in 2016, shortly after I arrived in Norway. I remember mentioning to a colleague that I was working on the topic of involuntary childlessness, and she said, I have a friend who's making a documentary about that. I can give you her contact. And so we met, and I cried for 3 hours, because this was the first time that I had been talking about this topic with somebody who was not my husband. And since then, we have been on parallel journeys, me writing the book and Hilde working on her documentary. I'm part of her film, and she's also in my book. And the relationship with Hilde has kept me going over time. For years, in fact, we've been saying that maybe we can have the book launch and the film launch as a joint event, and we nearly managed that. I think, Hilde, your documentary deserves its own event, but today she will give us a preliminary taster of her work.
Ifølge mine foreldre så sa jeg allerede da jeg var 4-5 år at jeg ønsket å bli en ordentlig mamma. Jeg har ingen klar erindring om det selv. Men jeg kan på en måte erindre følelsen, skjønner du? Eller liksom stemningen rundt det. Allerede da jeg var 19, faktisk, så kom den følelsen tilbake. Men da var jeg på en måte veldig klar på at jeg skulle få en akademisk utdannelse. Så ventet jeg for lenge. Det er jo flere år siden jeg på en måte erkjente at dette kommer ikke til å skje med meg. Gud, det var vondt det var. Det gjorde fysisk vondt.
Hi.
Hi, Christina. How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
This is the question that keeps on coming back to me, is what was the point of the life of my parents and of all my ancestors, in fact, if then there's nobody after me? Not having a child, it just deletes the past and deletes also the future, because there's nobody after me.
I understand what you're saying, because I was very concerned about that for a while as well. But, I mean, you're a successful researcher. And when you say that you're not leaving anything behind, that is not really true. Because I think you leave traces in other people, in both children and adults, even though your genes are not there. Yeah, you can definitely live in the future, even though your genes don't continue.
But at the same time, there is something about the materiality of the genes, of having somebody coming after you. I think really quite often about death, I mean, these days, and how knowing that there is no child after me makes me feel like there is some kind of death sentence on me. I will die more than other people in other way.
För en sak är ju att vi mår inte bra när vi inte får det barn som vi vill ha. Men varför är det så himla angeläget att få barn? Och då kan vi börja titta på livet och världen och evolutionen och biologin och kroppen, och vi kan titta på psyket, alltså hur vi faktiskt förhåller oss till vår egen värld, vår egen identitet. Så det är så många krafter som strålar samman i den här individen då, som är kvinnan eller mannen då, och i det här paret. Så det blir en sån enorm kraft i det här. Alla av oss letar efter det jag kallar för en existentiell struktur. Vi måste ha en ordning på orsak och verkan, så att säga. Jag har väldigt svårt att ta det här, jaha, det blev så här. Ja, men varför blev det på det sättet då?
Så det var först efter att jag fyllt 43 som jag tror att jag började kunna börja sörja på något sätt. Kunna börja ta in. Och då kände jag väl ganska snabbt att jag var ensam. Varför pratar man bara om ofrivillig barnlöshet som en period innan man får barn? Då kändes det som att jag inte riktigt fick finnas. Att det fanns ingen plats för mig. Jag fick ingen förebild eller... Jag önskade så att jag hade bara haft någon som kunde säga till mig att man kan leva ett bra liv utan barn.
Rett og slett. Vil du si litt om hva du skriver om?
Kanske att det kommer att bli titeln på boken. Men det behöver ju landa lite. Det är för att den heter Andra sidan tröskeln.
Det er en veldig fin titel, da. Jeg tenker andre siden av terskelen, det kan jo være så mye. Det er jo å gå fra et rom til et annet.
Ja,
Også.
så kan det vara.
Ja. Nå har du vært her så langt i livet, så krysser du den terskelen, og så kommer du inn i det rommet. Så er du der.
För min tröskel ser ut så här. Många som jag pratar med förstår inte. Då tycker de att nej, men det ska inte gå ner. Det ska vara uppåt, uppåt, uppåt. Nej, men alltså, de menar att det är negativt att det går ner igen.
Nej, men du kommer ju nedenifra. Du kommer ju fra et sted, og så må du bestige en barriere på en måte. Da. Altså, du må liksom klatre over noe.
Jag känner att det är lättare liksom när man har kommit hit. För det är lite kämpigt att klättra upp för berget här. Men när du är här uppe så är det lättare att... Då har man banat vägen för att se möjligheterna som kommer här.
I ettertid så har vi fått disse supre barnebarna da, som du har et nydelig forhold til. Men det som er ideelt nå er jo det alle besteforeldre opplever, er jo at du kan gi det tilbake når du ikke orker mer. At vi har nå altså fra 0 til 7 år, vi kan velge også på øverste hylle hvilket alderstrinn vi ønsker å ha hjemme i helgen. Skal vi smukke, eller skal vi spille fotball?
Forsiktig, nå trekker stolen litt nærmere da. Så kan du kose masse. Se. Bare kose, kose, kose.
Falt du ned fra benken, eller fra bordet?
Nei.
Jeg føler jo på mange måter at livet mitt er veldig fylt av alt det som jeg savnet da, og tenkte på som meningsfylt med det å ha barn.
Okay, we have watched now the excerpt, and I must say that I've had the privilege of watching Hilde's work before, but it's always very emotional to watch it again.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate. And first of all, I just want to congratulate you with your book. It is such a great achievement, and it actually means so much to so many people.
Thank you.
And I look so much forward to read it all. I mean, I'll listen to a little bit now during the event, and then I also read some parts. But I look forward to see the whole book. Yeah, we have had parallel journeys, and the first encounter with you was also very emotional and strong to me. We have had many strong emotional encounters, and it didn't take me very long to find out that I wanted you to participate in my documentary.
So we have a few more minutes, perhaps, to talk about your movie. And so I would like to ask you, what were the challenges in making this documentary? I know there were many, but maybe you want to deal with some of them.
Yeah, there have been many challenges, Christina, both personally and cinematographically and financially and otherwise. I guess personally, it has been very challenging to have several roles like I've done now. I mean, to expose my personal story in this way is quite demanding in itself. To go through this old pain and suffering, but then, I mean, to have the director's view on myself has definitely also been very, very challenging. In my previous films, I've always been thinking, I admire the ones who are able to stand in front of a camera, and I've been thinking that I would never do that. And I've been very, very grateful for everyone who has been able to. And now I've been doing it myself. But I guess what has been the drive for me is the fact that this is so, this goes so deep, and it has such a tremendous impact on your life. And I think it is so extremely important that people are being made aware of what involuntary childless people, women and men, might go through. Of course, it differs from individual to individual, but to me, it seems like some of the emotional reactions are quite universal. So I guess that is what has, been driving me. But also, it has been challenging to get sufficient financial support because I've been met with statements like, well, I believe this is interesting only for the childless ones. I mean, this is only a small matter. I mean, it's only a small audience, so we don't really feel the urge to contribute financially. Also, I received reactions like, well, this is quite heavy. This is not entertaining enough. We want to finance.
Sorry, it's not entertaining.
More entertainment, you know. But of course, I mean, it differs. I have received quite a bit of financial support, but I have not received enough, and it has taken time. But also, I have been met with comments like, well, I don't think this is representative enough. You should have chosen characters with different, I mean, coming from different social classes, having different socioeconomic backgrounds, being in different age groups. And I also find that a bit, I don't know what word to use, annoying, or I find it disappointing, I guess, that it is so difficult to understand how universal this actually is. And I think it is also universal in the sense that it is an existential topic. I mean, everyone struggles with existential issues in some periods or at some time during their life. So I actually think that this has an interest to everyone.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it is about life itself.
because I guess the feedback you have received and also I have received also from parents, perhaps people who have become eventually parents but who've had some difficulties. And so, and even for parents who didn't have them, I think it's really easy to identify with the existential struggle that is portrayed, I guess, in my book and in your film. And
yeah, but I also, yes, but I also believe that, or I'm certain, I mean, this can be considered or viewed as not having been able to fulfill your dream. I mean, and that can, what do you say, adhere to anything. Academic career, being able to be an artist, being able to be a successful politician. I mean, whatever. So it's not only about childlessness, it's about the existential issue of not being able to achieve what you thought you were going to achieve in your life.
Yes. Okay, we're starting another conversation, this time with the HILDEGUN SARITA SELLE, and Anders Möller unfortunately couldn't make it today.
Put in cancer, you know, for the responses that I usually get for childlessness, and it sounded to me something like, wow, cancer, that sucks, but everybody can be healthy. Or, oh, you've got cancer. Well, it's not exactly a holiday to be well either. You know, you should just know how exhausting it is to be around everywhere and work and and you know, it just went on, and even that therapeutic response that when I listen to you, I have the feeling that cancer is dominating your whole mind, and everybody can laugh or smile at the obvious, you know, strangeness of giving that sort of response to cancer. And I want to use that because that's a strange, just that's strange it feels when we meet responses on childlessness.
Thanks. So if practitioners could respond better to childless patients, what could they do?
Well, I think whether therapists or others, I have started to say that just be careful and take a moment and consider what would you have said to a mother who just lost a child. And anything that you would find inappropriate to say is probably inappropriate to a person who is involuntary childless and in pain. When they are in that process where they need help to get the grief starting, then you just need to, that's all you need to know. Anything that you would say to a mother who lost a child would be appropriate to somebody who is involuntary childless. And one of the reasons I can say that is that over several years, there is one group of people who has intuitively and spontaneously given me that confirmation, and that is parents who have lost children. Over time, cross-sectionally, cross-culturally, I have met fathers, mothers, women who have lost children. Some of them lost more than one. And every one of them responded very surprisingly to me, as if I was the one with the hardest loss. They would say things to me like, they felt so sorry for my loss because they had loved and held. I have never held love. Or they would say things very spontaneously as they have lost one child, I have lost all of mine. And that's why slowly I have stopped feeling as if my grief is a stolen grief. For a long time I felt like I stole grief from someone by even seeing that resemblance. But now I'm absolutely convinced that if therapists sat down and considered this to be what we need to be, the work that we need to do is grief work. And I have to say that I have met that once in a therapist that I know who actually just responded, wow, let's just sit and not say a word because this is too big. And you know, anytime you hear that, then the energy starts flowing. That's when the grief can start flowing. That's what breaks the trauma.
This is so true. And I feel also because this is a taboo subject, sometimes even therapists are at a loss for what to say, or they feel uncomfortable, and so they come up with trying to fix the problem, a problem that cannot be fixed.
Yeah. Yeah, there is. Just this spring, I watched a series that I'm sure that many people have seen this year, especially since everybody has been at home most of the time. There was a series called Place to Call Home. It was this Australian series, and I sat there watching it, and you know, there are two main childless characters, and the one is of course crazy and dangerous.
Typical.
Yeah.
As demonstrated by the studies.
And she ends by killing herself, which is absolutely, you know, they take that narrative full circle, as we know. Then there's another childless person, I think she steals the baby. And then there's a third one. And in one of, I think in this series ends in the fifth series, I think, you know, no, what we call, not the series, but there are 5 or 6, what do we call them? Not episodes, but...
seasons?
Seasons, thank you. And I think it was the 5th of the season where it ends with a conversation between the childless young woman and her mother, which I thought, wow, for the first time, we really have a full circle grief. You know, this is how life is going to be. And the very first scene, in the very first episode, in the next series, she's stroking her large tummy. She had the miracle baby. And I think that's what media gives us. You know, these are the narratives that we are given, and that adds to the taboo, the trauma, and it makes the grief difficult.
Thank you, HILDEGUN. This was I always find the conversations with you interesting and enlightening, and so thank you so much for this. I think we are going to take just 1 minute break before the next speaker. So thank you so much for the contribution today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Okay, let's continue with the next conversation. This time we're going to talk about childless men. And my guests are Robin HADLEY and KRISTIAN OPHAUG. At the beginning of my study, I was wondering whether the issue of childlessness would affect also men. And so I googled men and childlessness, as you normally do. And I found you, Robin. And in fact, you were all over the place. You were in the media, you were in research, you were everywhere. And I discovered that you are in fact one of the most active researchers on this topic. And there are incredibly few researchers about male childlessness. But I was also impressed by the fact that you were not only a researcher, but also yourself a childless man. And you were speaking publicly about it. In fact, you clearly want to raise awareness about this. And that is also why I reached out to KRISTIAN here in Norway, because he is the first Norwegian man who's been talking about this topic. And I thought that this was incredibly courageous, and then I thought immediately I had to contact this guy. So I will let the two speakers introduce themselves. I'll just say briefly that Robin HADLEY is an independent researcher on male childlessness and aging, and he's one of the founding members of the organization Aging Well Without Children. He's based in the UK and he's joining in from Manchester. And KRISTIAN OPHAUG is a family therapist, and he is based here in Oslo. KRISTIAN will be contributing in Norwegian, so I will be trying to translate. Please bear with me because I'm not a professional translator, and maybe KRISTIAN, if you make some pauses so I have the time to translate, especially for Robin, because I would like this to be a conversation between the two. But feel free to ask questions to anyone if you like. Okay, so I would like you to introduce maybe briefly yourself about how come that you have become engaged with this topic?
Yeah, beklager, sorry that I couldn't do this in English, but the topic is too emotional near me, so I prefer to do it in Norwegian.
No problem.
Ja, jeg heter Kristian, 45 år. Social workers og familieterapeut. Og jeg og min kone har oppdaget ganske fort egentlig at vi fikk barn på egen hånd, sånn som vi hadde trodd. Så vi søkte hjelp for å få barn på sykehus.
Okay, so KRISTIAN is a family therapist, and his wife and himself, they discovered at some point that they couldn't have children by themselves, and so they looked for help to get children. Yeah.
Så var vi veldig heldige, egentlig etter et par IVF-forsøk, så fikk vi en sønn som I dag snart 10 år. Men allerede under den prosessen og I forsøket på å få en søsken til den gutten som vi holdt med I nesten 8 år, så savnet vi en emosjonell oppfølging, eller et emosjonelt fokus på det å være I den jakten på å få et søsken til barn.
Okay, so and they managed to have a son who is now 10 years old, and then they also went through the process again, if I understand correctly, to have is it sister or brother? To
have a brother.
A brother, and who is now 8 years old. And so this is being quite an emotional and long journey in which you actually call a hunt for the child.
Det som skjedde var jo at vi fikk jo den sønnen vi har nå som 10 år, og så fikk vi et par år en barn, den ble gravid på nytt, men det barnet døde I fødsel, efter fødsel. Og så begynte vi på en måte det å få I Garbo, vi ville ha et søsken fortsatt da. Og det var liksom det savnet etter Når vi visste barnet, så fikk vi jo ganske et oppfølging sånn sett, men når vi var liksom I en fertilitets-IVF-prosess, så var det veldig lite fokus på hvordan følelsene våre var I dette.
Okay, and after the birth of the first child, after a couple of years, KRISTIAN's wife got pregnant, but unfortunately the child died during birth. And so they still wanted a sibling for the first child, and so you went through. And you feel like there's been a little focus on the feelings you were going through because of this hunt for the child and because of this focus on getting to the result, if I understand correctly.
Så etter 7-8 år så fikk vi det barnet som snart 10 år, og så tok vi til slutt beslutningen at nå nok enough is enough, altså nok nok, og vi avsluttet IVF-behandling. Og tiden etter det oppmuntret meg til å utdanne meg til å bli familieterapeut og møte par og andre menn som ufrivillig barnløse.
And I missed how long this whole process was. I understood 28, but not 28 years, right?
8 years and 15 attempts to, yeah.
Okay, so 15 attempts and 8 years. Yeah, so it's been a really long process, and I guess that motivates you to be engaged with this topic, and particularly you want to offer something to childless men who are involved in this process.
Yes. That's briefly me.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah.
Robin.
Hi. Well, thank you for inviting me. What a superb book. Fantastic that you've done this. And thank you, Christian, because that was so moving. Yeah, thank you. It's a small world and it's not doing enough for sharing your story. Okay, so we have something in common, Christian and I, in that we both qualified as counsellors. And it was through counselling that I became interested in the subject of involuntary childless men, or the desire for fatherhood, for my dissertation. And that came about because of counselling. You've got to do a dissertation about something you felt and experienced. And I was very broody in my mid-30s. I was desperate to be a dad, and I didn't become a dad. And so I looked at that and I found there's really nothing about men and their experiences about wanting to be a dad. And by comparison to women, there's not that much around fatherhood either. But right at the bottom of that pile is involuntary male childlessness or circumstantial male childlessness. So that's what got me interested in it. And it's carried me on. And I did a study in MSc looking at levels of broodiness, the desire between men and women. It's assumed women are broody and men aren't bothered. And that statement is still quite prevalent today, even in academia. Men aren't bothered. Their experiences are pushed to one side. That's not looked at. And I found the levels around about the same, which isn't really surprising, but it's surprising it's not out there. One of the other things is that men were more depressed and more jealous and more angry about that than the women. And then I did a PhD looking at the impact of the older men's experience of involuntary childlessness across the life course. And there is this ongoing grief and negotiation of not being, there's something missing. It's everything, it's always a term the men use, there's something missing. And there is something missing. There's something missing in here, emotionally, but there's also something missing structurally, politically, and socially. So that's my story.
Thank you. Yeah, and in fact, I touch upon male childlessness in my book because it strikes me that this topic is immediately associated to women, but in fact men suffer as much for not being able to become fathers. So my next question for you both would be, what does it mean for a man, what does it feel not to be able to become a father? Maybe Christian, do you want to start?
Thank you. Jeg sier jo det at jeg mener jo det at det like sårt og tøft og vanskelig og sterkt savn for menn som for kvinner, det å lengte og ønske et barn da.
So it's the same for men, essentially. It's as strong and as painful, and it causes as much of a wound as much as for women.
Så det jeg møter ofte med de mennene jeg møter, at de uttaler et veldig et sorg, en stille sorg, som jeg kaller det, og de føler seg veldig utenfor et sosialt fellesskap. De føler veldig ensomhet og litt en skam, og det der en følelsen av at de ikke duger som mann da, jo ofte det som at de har liksom mistet sin manndom, på en måte, det å ikke kunne klare å gi et barn til sin kone.
So there is a feeling of grief, of feeling outside, so cut out, isolation, loneliness, but also shame. and the feeling not to be a kind of functioning man, not to fulfill the role of man, particularly so as related also to manhood, and not being able to give a child to one's partner or wife.
Yes, thank you.
A fantastic answer by Christian. Just what he said.
That was quick.
Yeah, it was quick. I think there's something around being liminal, not being quite part of anything. That's a feeling, but also constructed in society as not being part. So constructed out of society, in effect. So you're latent, you're hidden, and you're also liminal. So, and I think that one of the differences between men and women is the narratives around childlessness and motherhood. There's much more around, I think, for women, not all of it brilliantly positive in any way, as HILDEGUN showed. And I think that's where men struggle. Where are the narratives that you can leap onto and use and adapt for yourself, so you can have a story that's legitimate? So this idea for me, liminal, is between the self and the outside. The outside that probably doesn't want to know yet, and the inside that wants to say something, but in a way that's legitimate outside. So you're stuck in this gap. Yeah, so there's an existential gap on many levels, I think. And so for me, I think somebody on the questions asked you, Christina, was writing the book Therapy for you. And I think my work is a bit of therapy, and one of the things I got from it was, one of my underlying questions was it just me who felt like this? And in a way, it's good to know that other men feel it, but then it's bad to know that we can't express it. That's it for me.
And in fact, my next question was going to be, why are men so silent about this? So we know everyone is silent about it, but for example, even in writing the book, I was trying to find interviewees, and at the end, I mean, it's really difficult to find men who want to talk to you about this topic. So why are men so silent?
Ja, det er jo et mangel på det å prøve å få barn, og det å føde barn, og det å oppdra barn er jo liksom et kvinnedomene, da, kan man si. Så det er jo, henger jo litt sånn etter i det å snakke om dette. Så opplever jeg også at de har jo ikke så mange menn har ikke så mange modeller å snakke til, eller det er jo ikke så mange som har vært åpne om dette, så de har liksom ikke så hvem skal de på en måte lære av, eller hvordan skal de åpne seg opp? Altså, samtidig så er det jo mye skam og mye skyld, og det er tabu, så det er jo vanskelig. Menn har jo en generelt vanskelig å åpne seg også om sånne ting. Ja, beklager, Kristina, jeg bobbler over når jeg snakker.
No, absolutely. So Christian is apologizing for because it is an emotional topic, but so he was mentioning how children and giving birth to children and raising children, that's a topic that is tends socially to be associated with women. So in a way, men are outside of their domain. And there is, of course, the shame, the sense of guilt, and other men who are not open to talk about this. So basically, there aren't even the occasions to share a conversation about this.
Oh, okay. Again, just what Christian said.
You're going to be best friends.
Absolutely.
You could be in Manchester, Robin. Yeah.
I'm small, Christian. Margaret Atwood said in one of her books, a character of hers said, women are scared of murder and men are scared of humiliation. And I think there's something in that. I can't really comment about the murder because I think everybody's scared of being murdered to some degree at some point in their life. But the humiliation for men, I think that is pretty key. And I think that's how we're socialized from a very young age, how to be. So if you look on social media, you know, really interesting to look at what age a boy is referred to as my little man, my little soldier. And sometimes it's very, very young, in the first year. And so how is that then taken through society for that boy's life? Equivalent age girl, I think will probably be called a princess or a little girl, and that's taken all the way through their life as well. But there is a difference. Men are also socialized to sort of be outside themselves for goal-oriented by action. And so what I think tends to get built up in men is like a concrete plug here that stops the emotions coming through directly. So when I was counselling, and if I asked a man how he felt, he'd say, I think I feel. And that gives you an absolute root of what's happening. I'm thinking how I feel. And I'm going to deliver that message to you in a safe way. And I also have to make sure I'm not humiliated by delivering that message. So I think that is really key about why men don't talk. It's not that they don't talk, they do talk, but they've got to be in a very safe place. So when I've been talking to my men, because I said, you know, I'm a man who wanted to be a dad and didn't become one, then that's a shared experience. And we're able to build on that. But that takes a bit of a big step for a man to do that. First up. But men do talk, but they're not used to being listened to, is key as well. And they're unsure about humiliation. And again, what social media are around for them to draw on and adapt. So they can say, I'm like this person, but my story is slightly different. That's my view.
Thank you. I just want to say something, Christina, that ofte menn, det er jo forventet i samfunnet at menn skal være sterke, og at liksom, de bruker, når det kommer til følelser, så blir menn ofte litt sånn, får som den, noe jeg leste en gang, de har sånn maskuline overlevelsesmekanismer, masculine survival mechanism, du ikke blir svak og ikke framstå som sårbare, skal være den sterke som skal tåle alt, altså det er jo liksom en sånn forventning eller en sånn generell oppfatning av at man ikke skal åpne seg og være svak.
So this goes against the social expectations about men, because they are supposed to be strong all the time, and this is part of their masculine role of providing survival, and so they have to be strong all the time. And so if you come out and show your vulnerability, suddenly you're weak, and yeah, so you're not a real man in a way. I'm adding this, but I think that that's correct.
That's correct. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I think also quite often men are seen poorly for not attending doctors, for not going to therapy, particularly in infertility. When men do go, they go as their partners, and it's for their partner, not for them. And I think there's something around that, actually, what does society expect of men? And when men don't fulfill that expectation, how are they treated by people in the health service? Because, you know, it is people and that deliver services. And sometimes your default feelings and expectations come through with that delivery.
Yeah.
Do you think there are differences in the way men respond in Norway or in the UK? So I don't know if this question is unfair, because maybe, Robin, you haven't witnessed Norwegian men, and you, Christian, haven't witnessed the British men. But could there be some cultural ways that differentiate how men behave in relation to this topic, or do you think it's universal?
Oh, it's a big question, Christina. Jeg tror det ganske likt, tror jeg. Men jeg ser jo at det flere briter som har, flere britiske menn som har podcast og blogs og dadblogs og Instagram-kontoer om tema enn i Norge, for eksempel. I Norge det jo kun meg. Men det jo, landet jo...
So you've seen other childless men, well, men speaking out about childlessness in other countries, but not in Norway. I mean, in Norway, it is really only you.
Yeah.
So this is a particularly taboo issue here.
I England så England have seen dad blogs and podcast and Instagram.
Yeah, so in England there are podcasts, there is Instagram, and I missed the first term, but yeah, there are posts about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are, but it's fairly new, and a lot of it's driven by the posts, the blogs, the podcasts around infertility, and a lot of it is driven by women wanting to know why the men weren't talking and what the men's views were. But there's been a response to that, and that is good. I think it depends where you go in society to how people respond, and I think the thing we're doing here is, and Christina's book is great because it opens up a conversation. It opens up a resource for people to go to. And I think culturally, some cultures are very defined in their expectations of people and the roles they fulfill. And so, Shku in Zimbabwe, Sunam Care, said some really interesting things about being childless for men and women in a very pro-natalist society. And a research paper, not by Shku, but by somebody else, title was, "You are not a man if you are not a father." Now, I think in some societies that's really overt, it's out there, but in others it's underneath, but it's still there. And I think in the UK and England, it's underneath, but it's there, and it comes out as a default when times are tough.
And something else I wanted to ask about, unless Christian, you wanted to say something?
No.
Okay. I want to touch upon the issue of growing old without children, because this is a political issue that is absolutely pressing for millions of individuals, but there is absolute silence about this. Politicians don't deal with it. In fact, they always talk about families, and that's about it. Why, Robin, I'm asking you because you are one of the founders of Aging Without Children, and yeah, why there is so much silence about this?
I think because it's a difficult subject. It's a difficult subject to manage and to draw policies for. I think also a lot of policies have been drawn on research and on statistics and demographic projections, but because they've only been looking at family, they've only seen family. So the ONS, the UK's statistical body, released a report a few weeks ago saying in 2045 there'll be 3 times as many childless older women aged 85 and over than there are currently, and that needs something to do with that.
And again,
but there was
they are leaving the men behind, so they're focusing on the childless women. But hey, what about men?
And that's because they collect the data on mothers at childbirth, but not the data on fathers. So it's an easy sum to find out how many women don't have children. But you're leaving out 49% of the population generally by not collecting the data on men and not having that policy on men. So in Western societies generally, people don't have children will say, I don't have children, so they would look after me in old age. And that's fine. But actually, the state expects your children to look after you in old age in one way or another. And if you look at the policies around social and healthcare, it is around families. And the families become intermediaries and advocates for their parents. And if you don't have that, who's going to do that for you? And if you do have children and you don't want to do that for you, what have you put in place? Because you're in a similar position as a childless person then. Who's going to advocate for you when you don't have quite the capacity to advocate for yourself? So it's a short answer, I hope, to a complex question.
Yes, thank you. And last question to both of you. Why does it matter that men speak about this issue? And is there anything that can be done to help them open up about it?
Jeg tror det har stor betydning at menn får muligheten, i hvert fall vet at de kan snakke om det, eller at jeg tror det påvirker både hverdagen deres og livet deres og som partner da, og at det en lettelse for de å kunne snakke om det, men hvordan de kan, jeg tror de trenger mer rollemodeller og på en måte en mulighet for å komme fram og snakke om det. At noen åpner opp og temaet trygt å snakke om.
Okay, so it has a great significance that men speak about this issue, and to know that they can talk about this issue, and this could be also a source of relief also for the partners, so it can help the relationship. So it would be important for them to have role models and to have the possibilities, the situation, I guess, the circumstances that enable this coming out in a safe way.
Jeg møter ofte par eller menn som bare holder ut og ikke snakker om det, holder ut og helt til det smeller eller crack, og blir på en måte, klarer ikke å jobbe, går fra partner, getting depressed, eller i worst case begynner å drikke mye alkohol. Det tenker jeg veldig viktig for menn at de får utløp for innlåste følelsene.
And so it's important to express these feelings because if you just keep it in, then at the end you crack, and then in some cases there is alcohol abuse and substance abuse and
and leaving partners and with work and
yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Christian again nails it. There was a great study in Sweden in 2004, a massive study of men, child fathers and childless men, and non-contact fathers and childless men were so much more at risk from poor health behaviors, suicide, cancers, and all that sort of thing. So there's something about reproduction and being in a relationship that is protected. And I think for men, because they're sort of judged by how they perform, what they achieve, economically, biologically, socially, when it comes to depression and suicide, what they're looking at is a view of themselves of not being virile in all those sectors that they are expected to be virile in. And so it's looking at, I think, for men, what's happening there, and this ideal man doesn't exist. And it's not relevant today, and it's certainly not relevant to you in your situation. And generally, you're just trying to do your best in a really difficult time. So by, yes, doing this sort of thing, your book, getting different narratives out there, then I think therapists and professionals, caring professionals, need to look at it and just see men not as the ideal, not as masculine, but as human. We are human, we're limited, and we're partial, like everybody.
Thank you, Robin.
So beautiful words to end this conversation. Thank you so much, both Christian and Robin. So I expect you now to be in contact, and I hope we can do something more together, because there are, at the end of the day, more childless men than childless women, and so this is a huge topic, and it's very important to raise awareness about this as for the whole theme. So thank you again for participating, and. Yes, and we move on to the next conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we are moving on to the last conversation today. My guests are CECILIE HOXMARK and LINDA MALM. CECILIE is joining us from Oslo. She's the producer of the podcast Barnløs på godt og vondt, which means childless for good or bad. And she is co-founder with me of Andre Veier, Other Ways. This is the Norwegian Association for the Permanently Childless. The other guest is LINDA MALM. She's a psychosynthesis therapist and founder of the Swedish organization Andra tröskeln, the other side of the threshold. This is also an organization for the permanently childless in Sweden. With my book, I wanted to reveal the structure of silence. And as I said in my presentation, silence is not just an absence of talk. In fact, one could say, well, can't you just speak out? Well, it's not that easy. It's a system of constraints. It's a kind of cage that traps you. And understanding this structure is a first step towards breaking it. And this is precisely what I would like to talk about with Linda and with CECILIE. What does it take to break the silence? Both you, Linda, and CECILIE, you are effectively activists. You are out there trying to raise awareness about involuntary childlessness. And so I would like to hear from you about what this means and what are the challenges that you face. But first, as with the other guests, I would let you introduce yourself. Maybe you can say what your activities are and how you became involved with this topic.
Okay, shall I start?
Yes.
Okay. Well, hello, and thank you, Christina, for inviting me here. And congratulations to your good book. Well, as childless myself, I was curious to find information about how to survive my situation. And since I didn't find that much information, I found out myself, starting writing about it, and started blogging and started a Facebook and started communicate with others in the same situation. And I thought that was very rewarding for me in my situation. So I continued to try to understand what it was like. So, and I'm still doing that. I'm supporting this group of people in the community and started this organization with 5 other women, the other side of the threshold. And now I'm also working on my book. But in my daytime, I work as a skin therapist. So that's my situation now.
I'm amazed by how, we all have alternative jobs, but then we give so much time to discourse, to create awareness. And I would also like to say that Linda has a special significance in my story because you were the very first person I interviewed for my study. And also you invited me to the famous event in Stockholm that started it all. But also, also the page that I found online, your Facebook group, The Other Side of the Threshold, that was also my first point of contact with a community that was that was in Sweden. I knew I would move to Norway, but there was nothing in Norway, and so that was my local community I could relate to. So it was really a huge source of support. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Cecilie.
Yeah,
what about
hello. Can you see me?
No, we can't see you.
And why is that? Because I put my video on, able to access camera. Okay. Yeah, I had some troubles with my Zoom today. I can see you and hear you, but you cannot see me. And even if I put on some nice makeup and dress and everything.
But
okay.
you are a podcaster, so you stick to the voice.
I do.
Yes.
I stick to the voice. Maybe it's happening something now. We'll see. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for that.
No problem.
Okay. Well, who am I? I'm 47 years old. I have a boyfriend, but I live alone. And in this context, it makes sense to say that I'm involuntary childless. I tried to get a child for almost 10 years with 2 different men, and then going through several IVF treatments. And what happened then at age 37, I went pregnant with triplets. And the reason why was actually that it was 3 eggs that was inserted. And everything went well until week 17. And then I lost them in a spontaneous abortion. And I used the word traumatic episode, and so I'm very happy, or not saying happy, but I recognize that HILDEGUN also used that term, and I used that term myself. We then decided to adopt a child instead, but for many reasons, the relationship did not last in the end. And I think that was because of all the, the struggle and time and everything. So when I turned into, I think it was 41 years old, I have, struggled so much feeling alone about the topic, have no one actually to talk to. And people tend to be, they didn't say it loudly, but they tend to be like, aren't you going to find yourself a new life, something? Are you going to think of the child forever? Or it was some signals, even if it was not outspoken in that way. So then I said to myself, you can decide how your life is going to be. And I decided that, okay, let's say that this is the decade that's coming is going to be my best one ever. So I told myself every morning, hi there in the mirror. You know what? You are now in your best decade. And what happens when you smile at yourself, give yourself a thumbs up and lift your arms in the air? You're smiling because it's a little bit stupid. But to me, it helps
I'm
a lot,
smiling because this is
believe,
such a fantastic story. And I admire you.
Thank you. So, and if you think that you are really in your best decade, what worse? What can happen? And if something goes wrong, you think, yeah, so what? It would turn out good in the next, on the next corner. So I started to write the book. I'm still writing on it, but I realized that after all, I had interviewed a lot of people, researchers, healthcare professionals, and so on. So I didn't really have a lot of episodes for a podcast. And you, Kristina, I think you were the second or third I interviewed in that podcast. And that has, it was so great to me. To really lift the topic to telling my story. I feel that was a relief, to be honest. Not only a relief, but it took away some, press on my shoulders.
And I remember when you contacted me for the podcast, in fact, then I did my search, of course, about you. Who is this woman? And then I saw that you had done an interview with NRK, and you had talked about childlessness. And so again, I thought, I need to talk to this woman, because by this stage, I mean, in Norway, very few people come out, and usually it's people who eventually got children. So I hadn't really come across a public woman who speaks about being childless and remaining childless.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
So what, this is a question for both you and Linda. What motivated you to speak about this topic?
Let's start with Linda. I will try to make my camera working.
Okay.
My motivation is, I guess, it started with my own needs, that I needed to understand my situation. How do you survive being involuntary childless for the rest of my life? I was really scared, and it was like Hildegard said, it was like being in a trauma over a long time. And how do you survive that? I needed to find others in the same situation. And for me, it was like, you can speak to someone in person, or you can speak out in public. It was, both of them was important for me to reach out to others and just try to put my life together somehow. So I guess it was a psychological motivation to speak about it anywhere I could, everywhere, and every opportunity I got, I wanted to speak about it, because it made it easier to understand. Does it make sense?
Yes. And in fact, I've always find very inspiring how you always try to reach out to journalists. You're always contacting people to try and speak about this issue. And this has really motivated me also to try and reach out. I've been following your example.
I'm glad.
Cecilie.
You know, you have asked me about that before, Kristina, and I think I really did not have any choice, because I felt that, like other topics in life, I mean, it feels so bad when you cannot just look at it and, talk about it. It's a lot of suffering because we do not share. And I also think that, we are human beings. We do all have the same set of negative emotions and positive emotions. So why is it then so hard to really tell how you find your life? But I have to admit that when I was just in the middle of my IVF and that very frustrating 10 years, I was not able to, because I couldn't think clear enough. But when I now see it from the outside, maybe more grown up, I think it makes sense that we just need to talk about it. Yeah.
And how is it to speak about such a sensitive and personal issue? Because at the end you're coming out with, you're coming out bare, effectively.
Yeah, sometimes I think it's okay, like I'm doing now, but okay, I'm surrounded by friends, so that's more easy, of course. I think sometimes I feel vulnerable, and then people just approach me like I'm, let's say, finished with every suffering, and I'm ready to talk about the subject at all times, which I'm not. So a part of me is saying, yes, you're doing the right thing. Another part, the more vulnerable and afraid one, I would say, is telling me, why on earth are you doing this? You don't have to. You can just go back, do a normal life or something. But it's a feeling that I'm doing something important. And ironically, I would say that this is very meaningful.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I can totally relate to that, especially in the process of writing the book. At some point I was thinking, why can't I just choose a normal topic? Why do I have to write about taboo and I have to feel all this process and pain and insecurity and everything, and then worrying about what people are going to think about me? Why? But then at the end I realized it's not just about me, it's about many more people, and if I can speak, then I have the duty to speak. And Linda, what about you?
Yes, the challenges of speaking out, it's I think it's hard not to talk about, because this is me, this is who I am, and it's hard to just move on with your life and it not can address how it's for you at the moment. And the challenge I would say is that a few people know that we even exist. So I guess I feel like a strange figure, like a strange person that others have hard to figure out how to put, where do you put you in life. And so it's hard sometimes. It makes me frustrated that it's hard to reach out to others while speaking about it. Sometimes I feel it's such a big threshold between us and them. I think that's where I get power from as well. I mean, it's strong. I want to educate others. So for me, it's a strong personal, emotional journey. It's something I really enjoy in time, because it's my life.
And you mentioned the threshold is really high. So my next question was going to be, why is so much silence around this topic?
Yeah, I think it's a kind of resistance, both from us and from others, because we have, it's hard to to understand your situation. It's hard to, you feel like it may be a failure, and you don't want to talk about it, and it's shameful, that many of us feel. And the media shows us only the happy endings and the films you've seen, and so I guess there is a distance being in our situation and the others. So I guess it's hard to reach, both from others to talk about us, with us, about this. I can also relate to what HILDEGUN said earlier about being a cancer patient and all the positive feedbacks you get from that situation compared to being childless. The silence and emptiness. So I guess this silence is like a big threshold for me. It's hard to reach others.
Yeah. And I don't know, Cecilia, if you want to add something.
If I had to pick only one word, I guess that's shame. That's the word I'm thinking of. I think Robin mentioned something else. What was that in English? Humiliation or something? I think it was that. Yeah. And I thought about this, because what is it doing with us as a human being when we feel humiliation? I think that's very scary, because we feel outside, outside the circle, outside the community. So it's something very existential about that. Yeah. And I guess that's why I struggled, and still sometimes are struggling when people ask me, what do you do for work? And the next question is, how about your family? Or do you have family? Then sometimes I feel, I should have said I have 2 kids and happily married or something, because that's the normal thing to say. So yeah, I'm still struggling with that question. Yeah.
And you two both have managed to break this silence in many ways. What feedback do you get? What is your experience of breaking the silence?
Oh, if I know, you know, I received so many SMS, and people have approached me and really thanked me for doing this. I think the feedback then is that people feel very lonesome with the problem or with the issue or with the life, and do not have so many to talk to. So I guess that's the most important. That's why I feel it's so meaningful. Yeah.
And Linda?
Yes. Well, the feedback I get is only positive, thankfully, and it's from people who comment on the blog or in the Facebook group, and everyone just being so positive about being together with others in the same situation. So I think that's very strong for us to meet others, and but also from a general public, if can be talking to someone who knows someone who doesn't have children, and they being encourage them to try to talk to them about the situation and ask me, what can I say to her, or what can I ask her something? And I said, yes, well, ask her about how is it for her to live without children, and see what happens. And I think that's also such a nice feedback to get, to help others through their friends and family around them. So only positive.
I remember having another conversation with you too, and also we were talking about how the feedback is positive, is overwhelmingly positive. But then there are some comments, and in fact, I had written a chronique for Aftenposten. This is a national newspaper here in Norway, and I remember the first 3 comments were online were from 3 angry men, and I remember reading those 3 comments, and I decided I was not going to reply to them, and then I just decided I'm not going to read any more comments, because it might be very few, but then they are very hurtful, and at that point, I realized that it's important, if you decide to come out, to protect your health, and and that's key to being an activist. I mean, can you relate to this? Does it happen to you?
Yeah, I think I can relate very much, Kristina, because NRK, the national Norwegian TV channel, they made a video where I told my story, and it ended well. I mean, the video ended well in a way, because it turned out that I was saying the phrase that I'm decided that the next decade will be my best one, but it didn't mention the podcast or the book or anything. The video lasts for 3 minutes, and it was seen by 742,000 Norwegians, and it was 600 comments or something, and not all of them were good. And we know, as human beings, if it's one comment that is negative, we tend to remember that one and forget the other ones. And I felt sometimes it was I couldn't read it because it was too negative, and it was hitting me personally. But they were like commenting on something, a subject that it was not important for me, or I was not there. So I think that was very much to put yourself in the hot seat. I'm not quite sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing. Yeah.
And how do we go from here? How do we raise more awareness?
My experience is that we have to take a step at a time. We think that we want to tell the world about our situation, but I think it's hard for a lot of information for everyone to take in who doesn't know that we even existed before. So we need to continued building step by step and reached out to more and more people every situation, and continuing doing what we're doing with sharing information and with the blogs and articles, and we also just started engaging with healthcare, where we can, for example, we are sending out a questionnaire to care units and institutions. So I'm really hopeful it will get us closer to the healthcare units.
Cecilie, what do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I have some thoughts, and I think the three of us have already discussed something which I really think is interesting. Me, myself, I will still continue with the podcast, and I have quit my job, 20 years in a pharmaceutical company. I say goodbye to that one.
Okay, I didn't
so
know
I will, yeah.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. So I will try to focus more on the podcast and the book and see how it evolves. But I think you are doing a very, very important job. So thank you for that. And I think maybe it's a cliche, but more people, we are stronger together or something, because I think we can probably do something. I mean, have some events or do something together. I think maybe that's more powerful than doing,
yes,
one by one.
What I understand more and more is that yes, social media is out there, the big public is out there, but then it's the important, as Linda was saying, of step by step and building a network, and even having trusted allies and friends, as you are here today. It's really important to work together and feel we are supported in raising our voice about a topic that is often, well, not only unheard of, but misunderstood as well. But is there a final question of the day? Is there a side of the story that we can further raise? Is there a missing side that perhaps we can give more voice to?
I think someone who doesn't have a voice at all in this, and that's the children we never got. To try to lift, I thank my child today for when the child never came to me. I have so much love to give to other things and to myself, and I think I thank my child for letting me be where I am today, and so I think it's important to think about the children that's not here with us today. And also I want to raise a voice for all the women or the men suffering from mental illness, a cost for society and in our most productive years. And I think we need more understanding and more acceptance from the society and surroundings, people around us, and to improve our situation. And I'm hopeful for the future, and we will reach a better understanding in the future.
That's really beautiful. Thank you. Maybe we should wrap up the conversation here on these beautiful words. And it is very touching that you mentioned, the children, our children, basically. And you and everyone have inspired me a lot. And I think I will try and live up to a good life for the child I didn't have, but who is very much a part of my life. Okay, thank you, Cecilie and Linda, for your contribution. I'm going to do a small wrap-up to say goodbye to everyone. So I hope the conversations today will help you think differently about this topic. And if you are affected by involuntary childlessness, I hope that we have made a grain of difference, perhaps, in your journey forward. And please know that you're not alone. We're many out there. If you are in Norway, but also if you are abroad, you can always write in English. You might want to reach out to our organization Andre Veier, Other Ways, the Norwegian Association for the Permanent Childless. There is also a group at the moment is for women only, but perhaps you're a man and you want to start one for men, please come forward, get in touch. And this is for women who know they are going to be permanently childless. It's called something along the lines of The Secret Cabin, Den Hemmelige Hytte. They are both on Facebook. Or anyway, drop me a line and I can lead you to them. I would like to thank you again very much, the speakers, for contributing. I would like to thank you online for following and for watching this video, and for posting your, well, at the end we didn't deal very much with the questions because of technical problems, but I hope perhaps you can post them in the comments and we'll try to get back to you. So wherever you are, take care, have a good day, and goodbye.